Hey everybody, what up? Scuffy here. And it is Saturday night into the Wolf weekend. Space Wolves are here. And I've got some time tonight, and there's a lot on the plate to do, but I'm looking to do a Space Wolf card by card. So let's get into it. I've been playing in the event. I just finished up a 12-win run. Looking to do a few more games with that and then share some pointers with a deck or two, depending on how they're doing. It's been kind of interesting, kind of trying to get my feet going. That's the first 12 win I've had. I've done 3 other runs prior to. So hopefully I can duplicate that effort and get a few more in there as well. On the plus side, I gotta say, my collection has grown, and I'm pretty proud of my polls. If you checked in my crate opening for the Space Wolves, I was gonna go until I got one legendary, and I just bought one crate, and I got the spear down here, the DNS and spear. Or no, I'm sorry, I didn't get the spear. I got Donmer Gunnarsson. That's right, I got Gunnarsson in my first Space Wolves crate, the only one I bought. I did a single run just to get my feet going. Got 7 wins on my first single and got the spear in that crate. And then after a couple more runs, I got Lehman Russ in another crate. And then I just finished up my 12 win, and I actually pulled pretty good. I think I pulled about 7 legendaries from the 10 crates. The only Space Wolf legendaries were a duplicate Lehman Russ and a duplicate Spear, unfortunately, but I'm already halfway with their legendary collection, and the Primarch is really the only one that you have to get from the crates. So the other 3 I can pick up when they're in the shop. I'm really stoked, really excited. Still got quite a few cards I don't have. Definitely a lot of epics I'm missing, and a few cards that you want to have more than one copy. But my collection's growing. I picked up Giger Fellhand today in the shop. So let's go into the all cards here. Let's just take a look. We're going to go through all these cards here. Some I've got, some I don't have, but I've seen them in practice. I've definitely been testing a few out in the events to see how they work, and there's a very good range with the Space Wolves. So first off, with the Space Wolves, one thing to consider is they've got two unique mechanics to them. Well, I can't say they're unique. I think Pack is unique to the Space Wolves. I believe we're going to see Ward in the future. I think we're going to see Ward on other units as the game progresses. But what Pack is, let's just take a look here. So Pack, if you haven't already seen it on some of the other videos that some gamers have done in card reveals, or if you're not on the Discord channel, they spoiled that as well. But Pack does something with when another friendly unit attacks. And then depending on what it is, that's what the trigger is. Just kind of in the same way that Perfection works. Perfection, this additional effect. Well, Pack is this effect every time some other friendly unit attacks. Now that includes your Warlord. So it's very possible to get some good momentum going with Pack troops, especially if you've got 2 to 3 cards already on the table, and you drop a Pack troop, and then you use all 3 of those to attack, and then you trigger that Pack ability 3 times. It really steamrolls, especially some of these higher end ones. We'll look at those. Now get your Fellhand, and this is something I'm going to be getting into here. I'm so happy that they added this feature for the emotes. That's one thing I've been asking for forever, so I'm glad that they added that. So Giger Fellhand, he's their 35 Warlord. He's got high initiative, which is great, and his ability is pretty solid. It's a deal damage equal to your attack, which most of the time is going to be 2. It's very, Loken. It's very Nev. It's not anything crazy, but he's also got Berserk, so he either has to attack or you have to burn 2 energy to use his ability, which makes it different. In addition, there are ways for his attack to get increased, and then instead of dealing 2, you could deal 3. But it lends some versatility to how he acts. He has to act. You can't just sit him back there. He's got to do something with them. So how you use him is going to depend on how you build your decks and what your card pool is. And it also kind of late game can sometimes make you reconsider how many troops you're putting on the board. If you're got 8 energy and you play an 8 energy troop, it's going to mean that he has to attack something. Is that what you want? Or can you play 6 energy worth of cards and then use his ability to avoid him having to do a face strike? So it's a little bit more thinking in that, but it's very good. I think in the event, at least so far, the event decks that he has are very solid. Again, his was the one that I got the 12-win run with, and the one I've been using mostly. I think I've split my runs. I think I've done 4 runs, 3 runs, 4 runs, 3 runs. I don't know. The majority of them have been with Fellhand, and then I did a Lehman Russ run as well. No, I did 2 Lehman Russ runs. One of them was just a terrible. It was like a one of, and it was not good. Stay away from the blade. I forget, that's like a Sword of Bale Knight, I think is the name of that deck. It is bad. It's his worst deck. Don't do it. So Giger Fellhand, he's good. He's not bad. He's good. Lehman Russ, Primarch. Boy, man, this guy he's got for 2 energy, he can gain +1/+0 and Bloodthirst until your next turn now. This has been asked, this has been talked about. If you're new or you don't quite understand how this works, when he gains that +1/+0, it means he gains Bloodthirst, which can let him act again. Which means you can then use another 2 energy to give him +4, so he'll have 4 attack, but he won't be able to attack with him. So, or you can just attack with him with that 3 damage. Basically, you can choose to do a little extra damage, or wall up and make them kind of think twice about attacking at you, kind of like Nemetor, without the ping damage and there. Now you might wonder, why is it worded this way? Well, it's because he's not Lucius. If they gave him can act again, he would be Lucius, and then that's not what Lehman Russ is. I think Lehman Russ is actually, I think it's very smart in how they did this, because a lot of people, and this is not to make generalities, but I think a lot of people assume Space Wolves are barbaric, they're rough, they're aggro, they're going to be more crazier than World Eaters, and to some degree they can be. But Lehman Russ is actually very smartly done here, because he's very tactical in how you apply him. You don't have to act with him. He's not Angron. You don't have to attack with him. How you choose to attack with him or defend with him is up to you. If you're fighting Angron, you don't even have to attack. You could just pump up your attack to 4 and make him come to you every turn, and you would have an edge until he starts getting Gorefather and whatnot equipped. But he doesn't have to play one certain way, and that's very interesting. And I like that, actually. Now his Reckoning is also unique in that, well, first off, this is how it triggers. So it costs 1 when both warlords have less than 5 health, which means he has to have less than 5 and your opponent's warlord has to have less than 5. That's a very sticky situation, but when it does, then he gains the Wolf King. He gains the +8 health, and then his attack shoots up to 4, which is crazy. And he gains Ward. He also gains Berserk. So, at that point, what does that mean? He has Ward. You're not going to take any late game Pride of the Emperor, Spirit of Vengeance, or Vengeful Spirit, rather. Any of those late game tactic damage attacks that close things out, or even Warlord abilities. Sentenced is not going to work. It's going to have to come at you. You either have to attack with that 4, or you can just pay the 2. Note he does not have Bloodthirst on this level. Pay the 2 and shoot up to 5, and then that makes them come to you. Again, it's a very interesting way it is, and because theoretically you could shoot anywhere between gaining health anywhere between 9 to 12 health is what you would have on that. Now, depending on who your warlord is and how they're playing, that would depend on how you choose to use him. Are you going to just pump his attack up to 5? Is it Angron? And does he have 4 health? And if so, then that might not be such a bad idea. Is it, Vulcan? Is it Kurz? Maybe you want to just go at him with your 4 attack and chew him up that way. It depends on the situation. He does have to act, but late game like that, you can easily afford the 2 energy. That's not going to be a problem. So, some people thought, well, is it more of a win more condition? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's a fallback. He gains 8 health. Maybe it's a late game healing for him just to make that clutch play, which to some degree most reckonings are. Some of them are not, usable at all, and I think those ones still need to be tweaked. But for most reckonings, it's kind of that last minute maneuver to keep you in the game, that one extra turn to do what it is that you need to do, which is win. And I think that seems to work well here. I also think that's crazy. This is the first Primarch with printed 4 in their reckoning. I take that back. Does Angron have printed 4? Does he? I don't have Angron, so he is still missing from my collection. He does have printed 4, so my mistake. So that puts him on par with Angron, but in a different situation, in a different light. He does not have to act like Angron. Angron has Berserk and Bloodthirst, and that's it. He has to attack. And, with Angron, normally if you're getting that going, 8 damage late game is going to win it. But that's not always the case with Leman Russ, so I like it. Now, Oath or Weirdmake, Ward, and I haven't talked about this yet because we talked about Pack. Well, Ward is this ability, and it's on Leman Russ. So they can't be targeted by enemy tactics or abilities, which, like I said, that's, those direct damage. Yeah, basically, it affects rally effects. It affects things that target to any degree, whether it's from your warlord, from a rally, from a tactic in hand, unless the tactic targets all or is random, or the ability is random, or targets adjacent. Sometimes you can, like for salamanders, you can target 1 unit and it burns the other 2 units. They're immune to it. They cannot be targeted. They can still take the effect if it's a secondary effect, but they're not going to be the target of it. And that is powerful. That is very powerful. Here's a warlord here who can heal 2 and give ward. And at the end of the turn, he also heals 1 to a friendly troop. So what he actually has is he has the original Tarek passive. But rather than a card draw effect, he also has an additional ability that lets him heal 2 and provide ward. He can use that on himself, which is pinch in a late game. Because late game, if you depending on who you're playing, if you're playing, Sons of Horus, and he's at 10 health, heal 2, so now he's at 12 health, and guess what? You magically dodged a bullet from being Vengeful Spirited. And all you have to do is pay that 2 energy every turn, and you will not be Vengeful Spirited. That's crazy when you think about it. Your opponent basically has got to stun you from using that ability, or somehow magically drop your energy so you can't use that, or force your hand otherwise, because they will not be able to close the deal with Vengeful Spirit, or Pride of the Emperor, or Contrador. Any of those high damage late game tactics you have just avoided. Oath or Weirdmake may very well be the warlord that Perturabo does not want to face, or at least the Perturabo build that just deals with damage and his ability. He can consistently dodge Perturabo's ability and every tactic that he has, and at the same time also apply that to his troop that he puts out. That's insane. In a good way. Now, what is interesting to note here, he is one of the few 30 hit point warlords who does not start with a card, an additional card. So I think that's a decent trade-off. He's going to be a little bit slower to build up because of his ability. You're going to be using his ability, which is going to allow you to build cards in your hand that way, but you're not going to start with that card in your hand. You have 30 hit points, and you've got medium initiative. So I think overall, I feel like these trade-offs are very solid. I think they're very smart, and I think they're well done. Very powerful, but typically your 30 HP warlords have got very powerful abilities. It's, you know, geez, I mean, think about good old-fashioned Tarvitz. I mean, Tarvitz's potential is crazy. Erlin is consistently one of your top warlords, whether people want to admit it or not. It's true. Garrow dominated past tense, but he still is very flexible. Even Loken out the gate, and he's not rare, he's just a starter, but I mean, he's never failed. 6 was good. Numian, I think, is the best Salamander's warlord, if you ask me. So I mean, he's right up there. He's right up there. He's got everything that he needs to have to function at that 30 HP, and I think that's a really good design. And I think you're going to see Weird Make coming up, especially just people running practices. But that too many people playing Word Make will single-handedly force tactic builds to change their game and change decks, and then everybody will play something that basically counters that. And that's how metas evolve. That's how the game grows, and that's how people kind of get pushed out of their comfort zone. And you need to get pushed out of your comfort zone from time to time. Now, the Sagacity Seekers, they've got an interesting rally. They're like a cheaper version of the Sons of Horus guys that come in and deal 2 damage. They cost 1 and they deal 1. But on the upside, you can also return them to your hand on your next turn and then use them again. That's interesting. That has implications. I've played them in the event decks, and I kind of hold on to them for late game, like to finish off a troop that's on 1 HP after I've attacked it or something. I don't see them lasting too many turns beyond the first time you use it. The only other time that I've had them last out there is if there was 2 other bigger targets in its late game, in which case is 1 damage going to make or break it. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but I don't know if these guys are auto-include. I am glad that I picked them up through the game crates. That's great. I don't have to chase them, but I don't know if I'll be throwing them in decks. Their low health means that the healing potential is not going to really be there. Their low attack really means that they're not going to do anything for me on the board. It really is going to come down to that rally ability. Now, the Underverse is a very interesting tactic, and I think with the right build, and it would have to be aimed to do an Underverse. Oh, by the way, the animation for this card is crazy. It's really cool. I love the animation for this card. Not the artwork's cool too, but I mean the actual in-game animation. So you return your troops to your deck, reduce their cost to 0, and then draw a card for each troop returned, which could just be 1 or 2 cards. Could be 4. You could conceptually play a barge, an Ornatarv's barge, with 7 energy, then play Underverse, cycle those all back into your deck, 4 or 5 troops, 3 or 4 troops, however many it is, and draw that many cards. And then if you happen to draw them again, dump them out. If you don't, you've still drawn 3 or 4 cards. And I mean, honestly, barge is always kind of a thing, and that's just a one combo I thought of. I mean, barge is one of those things where normally those cards that you play don't last the following turn anyways, but if you can find a way to give yourself some card advantage in cycling and potentially still put them out on table, that has potential, and that's just one way to apply it. You could easily apply it with your flank troops. Use them, flank them, underverse them, bring them back out, and now they're a 0 cost card on top of that. You can use Underverse to bring to essentially protect a beefy troop that you've got that is going to be finished off, that's got 1 or 2 HP. Well, okay, well, I'll just put it back in my deck for 0, and draw it, and maybe I'll draw it again and get to replay it right away, or maybe I'll just draw it later down the road. Late game, when you only have 10 cards in your deck and you're putting 3 or 4 cards back in your deck for 0 and you're drawing 3 or 4 cards, you exponentially increase your chances of being able to play those cards again for free. It's really cool, and it's going to take some science and figuring out. When I say science, I mean like just the good old tried and true test and retest, but I think Underverse has a very huge combo potential there. Now, Thrill of the Hunt is interesting. This is a 1 energy. It heals 2, and it gives stealth 1 turn to a friendly infantry or Astartes, which is good cost, very versatile. I think the Space Wolf decks in general can easily range from all Astartes or from Astartes and infantry, so it's a very good combo. It heals, and stealth is not a bad thing at all. I mean, this is a great way to keep your firewalkers around an extra turn after you've used them. It's a good way to keep anything out. I mean, give it 2 extra health. Gosh, for 1, not bad. I don't know if I'd throw them in every deck, but I like it. I like that it's good. It's a shame there's no healing for your Warlord, but you can give or take as you have. Now, Ansvar, these guys are a very cheap 2-drop. 1/3 doesn't seem like it's so, impressive. And I think they're really beneficial. I mean, early game, it forces your opponent to focus on them. They've got to get rid of them. Late game, the implications that they could have, they could go from a 1/3, depending on if you've got units already on the board, to a 4/3 on your turn. And then if your opponent can't get rid of it on their turn, you can crank that up even higher with more attacking. So they're good. I think they're really going to shine more and played with more units already on the table, as opposed to you want this card in your starting hand. Having your starting hand's not bad. It forces your opponent to deal with them, but you don't get a huge value out of it. You're basically just getting a 2/3, and if you're getting a 2/3, why not just have a 2/3 with frontline for the same cost, or a 2/3 with flank, for that matter, same cost. Nothing says that you can't have both, but I think that the value on playing these guys is more for the late game. Now, Canis Helix, I was on the fence about this initially. I passed it on the shop yesterday, and I actually got it from a crate today, and I'm glad I did, because actually playing it again, playing it in the vents, and kind of understand it, the mindset I currently have, and I think most players have, and we've got to get our heads around Ward. Ward protecting our units can't be targeted by enemy tactics or abilities. Traditionally, I put a unit down. I leave it alone. I don't pump it up. I don't do anything crazy with it unless I can give it stealth, because the odds are always high that your opponent can deal with it on the next turn. They can attack it, they can goldstone it, they can Melgator it, crack grenade it, whatever the case may be. But if you're giving them +2/+0 and you're giving them ward, you're eliminating half of what your opponent can do to deal with whatever that troop is. And if it's got high enough health, it reduces the options even further. If it's got 5 health, they have to have a goldstone in hand to deal with it. If it's got higher up than that, then they're gonna be eating something. If it's just got 4 health, they still need a troop with flank to deal with it, a faster flank troop to deal with it. Otherwise, they won't be able to do anything. And then on top of that, you're adding that +2 attack. So, just for instance, these Cobra Hunter guys, let's say I put them out there for 2, and then on my next turn they survive magically. Doubt it, but let's just say they did. They're now 4/3, but they're a 4/3 that can't be targeted by a Warlord ability. They can't be damaged by a quick fire. It's going to require something a little bit more like either a target all, like a frag grenade, or it's going to require the Warlord actually attacking and taking 4 more. And if they don't do that, then on my turn I get to use them anyways. So it's just a matter for me to wrap my head around. I can play a troop, and it's okay to play this on them because it actually increases their odds of staying on the board for me to use it on my next turn, which is great because that combo is even better if I can follow up on the next turn with a card like Ice and Steel, which gives +1/+1 to my troops. That is a card which I think, I'm glad I've got two. I feel like it should be a 2 of in every Space Wolves deck that has a lot of troops. It's just a flat across the board. Infantry or Astartes, you're giving it to them, and it's all of them. It doesn't need perfection. It's a 2 cost. On top of that, +1/+1. Sometimes that's all you need. And if you've got +1/+1 on a guy who's already got +2/+0, boy. And there are some troops here, we'll see, that just giving them extra health is ridiculous. So, but Ice and Steel, like the artwork, definitely a solid card. Canis Helix, also a solid card, and it just, I think it's a matter of getting, in terms of shifting the way you play troops and play tactics on troops traditionally. That's going to make a lot of people frustrated. You know, you throw out a 2 health guy, a Sigvar squad, and then you throw out a Canis Helix on him, and your opponent now has to either eat 4 by bashing you in the face, or eat 6 by you bashing them on the face on your turn. And that's only for 4 energy. And if you can hide them behind your front line, it just makes it even more frustrating. So a lot of potential there. Now the Cobra Hunters, I like that. I like the artwork here, and I like that they have flank. There are 2, 2, 3. It's very basic. It's very good. We're starting to see flank appear more. I think most of the legions have either a fast or a flank. Salamanders being the one that desperately needs something in terms of immediate value, but they've got sacrifice. And I think as time evolves, we'll have to see some of that change, but 2-3 flank is a great way to start. Have it in your hand. It's a good answer for sometimes that 2 extra damage, and that 3 health is what's important, because that 3 health can make or break on whether or not they stay on the table or not. I would prefer them to have 4, but that might be too much. So they're a good card. I would prefer to have these guys in my deck for sure as a 2 of. You never have a problem, and you can get the value from them right away. So I'm looking forward to picking up those guys when I can get them. Now the Sigvar squad, again, they get +2/+0 on your turn, which doesn't seem like a whole lot. You're like, okay, well, they're just going to have 2 on my opponent's turn, and that's true. But with cards like Ice and Steel, Canis Helix, and some other cards that we'll take a look here in a little bit, they have got potential. Do they need to be in your deck, in every deck? No. But I think if you built your deck a certain way, I think there is payoff in having them in your deck. Some of the event decks I've played have got them in them, and the results vary. I've been able to use them for their 4 attack several times, and then most of the time they just take the bite of 2 because your opponent doesn't want to take 4, but it forces them to act. Again, it forces them to focus on that card as opposed to your Warlord, and that's always what you want. Stalk the Stars. Now, I like the fact that we're seeing Drop Pod in a little bit more outside of the Sons of Horus and a couple other cards that are in like Perfection and World Eaters. It gives Drop Pod to your next Astartes or Infantry, which is unique. Infantry. So, nothing like throwing down Duke Mortimer in a Drop Pod, or throwing down, and your Merits Mercenaries in a Drop Pod, or any guy who's beefy infantry that you normally would have. Give them Drop Pod on top of that. That's cool. And then you draw a card. It's a decent trade-off. You kind of want to know what you're playing. It won't work on vehicles, obviously. I don't know if it's for every deck, but I've seen it in events, and it's okay. And I don't know if I'd squeeze it or not, but drop pod is not a bad thing at all. At all. And to be able to give it to an infantry has got a lot of potential, especially because we haven't seen what the new neutral infantry is going to be. What are we going to be getting here at the end of this whole arc? Now, Aldrim Hunters, these guys they do a lot more than you think they do. Pack, deal 1 damage to the enemy warlord for 3. These guys are the ping masters that your opponent will hate, especially if you drop them late with 2 or 3 units on the board. You can ping your opponent's warlord like crazy. You get 2 of these guys out, and just you attack with just your warlord. You're dealing damage from your warlord, plus you're dealing 1 damage from this guy, 1 damage from that guy, and now your opponent has to focus on these guys. Otherwise, they're just going to keep getting pinged. Great cards. I missed him in the shop yesterday, but he's a common, so I figure I'll pick him up through more play, through more crates, so I'm not too concerned. I definitely think that's a card worth considering in your decks, especially if you're building for pack. Curse of the Wolfen. Here's another card that gives your Astartes a stat boost. Not only does it give it a stat boost, it gives +2/+2 and Berserk. And when it dies, this card creates another copy back in your deck. Yeah, they get Berserk. Okay, there's nothing wrong if you're giving Berserk because you're going to attack with that unit anyways. You put it on these Valgar Seekers and make these guys a 4/6. Okay, I won't argue with that. And then if I happen to have already played an Ice and Steel or a Calyx Helix on them, good grief. I'm actually kind of surprised that we have seen 3 cards that boost the stats of your troops, whereas in the Emperor's Children there's two that can do it. You don't really see any stat boosts in the Sons of Horus. You get the ammo. You get 1 ammo that gives you +4/+0. You get some stat. You definitely get stat boosts through all the passives in the Iron Warriors. No, not the Iron Warriors. The Iron Hands. I'm sorry. Death Guard have got a stat boost or 2. They've got chem munition, but their big one is obviously Blessing of Nurgle and Favorite of Nurgle. Alpha Legion have 0 stat boosts. Salamanders don't necessarily have stat boosts. They have a couple of abilities that can give stat boosts. Raven Guard do not have stat boosts. Night Lords don't exactly have stat boosts. They've got that terror that kind of counters. That's kind of like a inverted stat boost. But here we're getting 3 cards that give stat boosts, 2 of which offer secondary abilities, Ward and +2/+2 and Berserk, and then putting a card back in your deck. In a way, it's kind of like a throwback to the Treachery cards in the original 4 Legions, the ones that give Mark of Chaos to each of your Astartes troops, which kind of makes sense thematically. But that's a lot of options. That's a lot of options depending on what you've got in your deck. If you've got a lot of Astartes, Curse of the Wolfen isn't a bad thing. If you've got a mix of Astartes and infantry, maybe you want Ice and Steel. If you've got vehicles, Ice and Steel is still not a bad thing. There's a lot of versatility here. And if you really think about it, if you really piece through some of these cards that we're looking at, the versatility that the Space Wolves have is this weird crisscross between the versatility of the Sons of Horus and the World Eaters in terms of the damage output that they can do and the fact that they can answer things. They have versatility in the way the Sons of Horus do. I think it's well done. Now the Emperor's Executioners, I picked this one up. It's a common, but I picked up the 1 extra copy and you did in the shop that was out there. Deal 4 damage for 3. There's no secondary effect. It's a common. You're not drawing a card like Chariot of the Gods. So this cost to damage ratio makes sense to me. I like it, and it's never a bad thing to have those options available to you. Whether or not you choose to put 2 in your deck is up to you, but I would suggest it for 3. Late game, if you have 10 energy, you've got 2 of these in your hand. That's 8 damage for 6, and you can still play another card or use another ability. Well worth it. Now, Horgan Pack, they're interesting. On the surface, you might think, this 3 for 3, heal 2 at the end of my turn. But what good is that? Well, if you can keep them alive after you've first deployed them, it lets them keep themselves alive, which as a 3/3 is frustrating. But if you've given them Curse of the Wolfen or Ice and Steel, it is just downright, like, just, it makes you rage. Or if it's on you and you're playing them, it makes you very happy. So, yeah, that's actually better than it seems. You've got to keep them alive, whether that's via drop pod or escape vent, or just having other targets that your opponent is going after, and they're not anticipating you being able to do what you want to do with it. But you bump those guys up to a 5/5. Okay, all right, and then I heal 2, the 2 that I took from damaging your opponent's warlord. Okay, now come at me again, because I've got 5 health and then 5 attack as on your turn. Yeah, these guys are better than you think. Now the Jortan Stalker Squad, these guys are a lot of people talking about. They've got Bloodthirst and they've got Ward, and that's actually the big thing between their 4 health and their Ward. Much in the same way, these guys are kind of very similar, not quite the same, but very similar to Horgan Pack in the fact with that 4 health, they have Bloodthirst, and they've already got Ward, so they're not going anywhere unless your opponent has got some flank troop or fast troop in hand to deal with them. And then, since I've already got Ward, I'll give myself +2/+2, and now I'm a 5/6. Okay, that's 10 damage. Or I just give myself a +1/+1. I mean, these guys there, I need 2 of them, and I'm going to get them. And those are going to be some of the all-stars in your Space Wolf decks. They're going to make people really upset. They're going to make people really frustrated. I don't know if they'll stay the same that they currently are or not. Time will tell if they need to get revised, but really good card. If you see it in the shop once it's out here, once they start drifting them out, I would recommend picking it up, especially if you want to play Space Wolves, because that's a card that you're going to rely on. Valgar Seekers, again, just, man, what a good range of 3-drops that the Space Wolves have. 2, 4, okay, but that sneak attack. Oh, wow, okay, so 4 health is great enough to keep them outside of anything really, truly devastating. And then the fact that they've got sneak attack on top of that, that could conceivably be 6 damage that your opponent's warlord has to take to deal with these guys if they don't have other options available to them. They're going to take 2 to attack them, 2 on your turn, and then 2 to follow up and attack them again. For 3, I've gotten 6. I think that's a good trade-off. I think these guys are good. And then on top of that, as many of the other cards up there, pump them up to a 6/6 or a 4/6 or a 4/4 with Ward. Have fun. So yeah, I like these guys. I like these guys a lot. Wolfclaw. Now Wolfclaw is interesting because on the surface, in the same way that you think that, you know, Lehman Ross is aggressive and barbaric, Wolfclaw's basic implication is gives your warlord +1/+0 on Bloodthirst until your next turn. Now when you apply that to Grieger Fellhand, who has Berserk, it means that he's going to have to attack. He's either going to have to burn 4 energy, or he's going to have to attack twice to deal with that +1/+0, which isn't bad. It ups his damage output. But if you're using it in addition to that, with the mindset that it's until your next turn, it's also defensive. in the way that you have upped your attack to 3, which, number one, deters your opponent from maybe wanting to hit you with their warlord. Number two, some of those troops that have got 3 health that are out there that, want to come at you, well, they're not going to survive that coming at you. They're going to go away right off the bat. And then it's specifically with Fellhand, just because I've been using him more, comboing it with his ability late game, that's 6 damage. That's a 6 direct damage that you can, if you've got 10 energy, you can blow 4 for his ability, 2, and then the 3 to play that. That's 6 damage for 3 for using this, and then on top of that, it increases your attack to 3 until your turn. So I don't know if it's there might be some decks that it won't be a 2 of, but I think most decks are going to see this as a 2 of, and it's very affordable with its 3 energy. But it's got offensive and defensive implications because of the duration of how it lasts, and I like that. Now, Extortion Campaign, on the surface, for 4 to deal 2 damage to the enemy warlord and adjacent units isn't great. And I think in normal ladder play, that might really hold up. I think really you're looking at artillery strike, or just upping it up to 5 with defensive satellites might just be the better play. However, it's not terrible against Raven Guard. It's not bad. But most importantly, and I think really what it's aimed for, is against other Space Wolves. It's kind of its own meta card because those adjacent units have a high potential of being warded. So you're not going to be able to target them directly. And maybe you don't want to attack them with your face. Here's a way to deal some damage to them. Are there better ways to do it? Well, there's artillery strike, and there's defensive satellites, and there's mortar strike. And those are the other random deal damage that surpass deal 2 damage. Like you can do Informant Network, but why deal 1 when you can deal 2? So depending on how the meta is, depending on what you're playing, it's something to consider. I don't know if you'd slap it in every deck, but it actually has value for where it's at. And then you're dealing damage to the warlord too, which is never a bad thing. Now Fenris is like an upgraded Cardok from the World Eaters card. For 4 energy, you're healing 2 to your units, and you're giving them ward for 1 turn, which is, I mean, if you've got 3 or 4 units on the table, and they're all within that range where, normally you would take a defensive satellites or an artillery strike or something on your next turn, like, great, I lost all my guys. Well, here's a way to avoid that. And not only are you avoiding it by healing, you're also avoiding it by giving them ward. So unless they have got that random damage, that's all they're going to be able to do without attacking you in face. They cannot just throw out a quick fire here on that one, and then I'll use my Loken ability on this one. Nope. No can do. Sorry. I'm healed, and you're going to have to come at me with your face, bro. That's nice. That's a good trade-off. Is it a 2 of in every deck? It might depend on your warlord, it might depend on your build, but I think it's definitely at least considering as a 1 of in every deck. If you see this in the shop, it's going to be a rare. I would recommend picking at least 1 up. Now, Halfdan Baelai, this guy is awesome. This guy is awesome. First off, he comes with ward. Second off, he's cost 4. That right there, I love 4 cost legendaries, because they really ramp the game up early on. But his pack, heal 2 and gain +1/+0. So he comes out, he's got ward, so your opponent cannot damage him with tactics, cannot destroy him with outflank, cannot return him to your hand with Ambassador Malgator. So unless they have got a flanking troop or other troops already on table, they're going to have to deal with him. And if they cannot kill him on their turn, you attack with your stuff, heal him up, increase his health, and then attack with him again, and he's now gone from a 3/5 to a 4/5 or a 5/5. And especially with the flankers that you've got here, playing Goldstones, whatever it may be, he could quickly shoot up to full health and have a 6 or 7 attack. And your opponent now has got an even beefier thing to deal with on their next turn. This guy is definitely, you cannot underestimate him. I think decks that have got legions that have got flank options are going to have to consider them in every deck if the Space Wolf meta shifts dramatically, because this guy cannot be ignored. This guy has got to be dealt with like a Scimitar Jet Bike and a Corax right off the bat. You got to save it for him, because if not, he is going to be too sticky to remove otherwise. Now these guys are kind of like the watered down version of them. They've got ward as well, and their pack gives them +1/+0. There's no healing here, but that +1/+0 only lasts until your next turn. So that doesn't seem great, but it in a way it's a kind of a deterrent. Okay, Mom, I can get him up to attack 5 on my turn. Do you want to deal with him with your face? Because if not, you're going to take whatever more I can deal on my next turn. If you can, you're still taking 5. They're not bad. The ward really makes them have more value. That's really what it comes down to. The 4 health is great because they've got ward. And because they've got ward, sorry, it's flanking fast, or you're just not getting rid of it. And if you're not getting rid of it, then I can get him up to at least a 4 attack if I only have my Warlord and him on board. If I've got him and my Warlord and I can play a flank or I can play a fast, he's just going to get stronger. So they're not bad. Now the same under Rindo. Currently, this is so far the first front line that we've seen with the Space Wolves, and they're a good front line. They're susceptible to a crack grenade with that 5 health, but you know that most vehicles should be. There's some here that we're going to get into that are not, and whew. So same under Rindo, 4/3/5 front line, pretty basic. And as a front line, you know, sometimes you want to attack with them or they're not doing anything else for you, but we're starting to see here, and I think it really kind of started really with these guys here, the 13th Breacher Squad, but we're finally starting to see frontline troops that can do something while they're being a frontline. Because yeah, you can attack for 3, but why not just sit and make them deal with you, and then I can pay 1 and I can get a card for my deck. Okay, I think that's a good ability. I think it's well designed, worth considering, especially depending on your Warlord. If your Warlord is Weird Make, when I say Weird Make, yeah, Weird Make, and you can throw that down and then heal it and give it ward every turn. That's, ooh, your opponent will be so mad with you. They can't crack grenade it. They can't play breach on it. They'll be mad. They'll have to attack it with their face. Nobody likes that. Thorbund Hunters. Now, these guys are kind of the escalated version of the Aldrim Hunters, in the fact that their stats are straight 5/3, but they're also dealing 1 damage to a random enemy. Now, like other tactics that we talked about with randomness, if there is no other enemy on the table, you can very easily control who that random enemy is that's taking damage, which would be your opponent's Warlord. And 5 attack is nothing to scoff at. They're susceptible. They don't have ward, so they are susceptible to Seek and Destroy or to Abaddon or, you know, to other direct damage effects, but they also force your opponent to focus on them. They're not terrible. You really want to put these guys down if you've got other troops already down in play, so they can trigger their pack, because otherwise you're not going to be able to get as much value on it as you would have if you're just playing it by itself. Now, I think Wolf Spirit is interesting. I don't know how I feel about this. This has got, which is weird, it's showing up here that it has drop pod, which I just noticed, because nowhere in here does it say it has drop pod. Like, is it saying it's a drop pod? It's a battle barge. I don't know why it has that drop pod feature on there, because it's not. It's a tactic. You put 3 Space Wolf Astartes that cost 5 or less into your hand. Those come from outside of the game, so that they're not pulled from your deck. And then you get a Curse of the Wolf into your deck for 4. So any of these troops here that cost 5 or less, so from Odin Command Squad back, you could potentially get them into your hand. And as we've seen, there are some great 2 and 3 drop options. You can still get Jurgen to go with it. This Wolf Spirit could potentially get you a Halfdan Baelai. If you don't have a legendary, and you'd like to have one for the game, in the same way that Captured Forge can make you a legendary Iron Hands vehicle. Wolf Spirit can make you a legendary Baelai, and that's not bad. So it might be worth considering. A tactic that puts cards in your hands and gives you troop options. Okay. Now these guys here, the Long Fangs are kind of like the wolf, the Space Wolf version of the Chaggart Squad. They're 4/5, so they're not a 5/5. Their ability costs a little bit more. Instead of dealing 1 to deal 3 damage, these guys deal 2 damage, but it costs 2. But they can also act again. So if they come out and you are late game, you've got 8 energy out there. Unless your opponent can drop something that has more than 8 health, you will consistently be able to kill it with the Anxar Longfangs, if you want to dedicate all your energy on your next turn to do so. Drop an 8 health. Drop a Malgahurst. Okay. 2, 2, 2, 2. He's dead. And then I'll attack with my guy for 4. Or, you can throw other cards out, deal 4 damage to Malgahurst, and then attack with him and finish him off. I mean, these guys are really good. I think they're going to frustrate people, but I do think that their cost of their ability is balanced. In the same way that you don't always see Chaggart Squad because of the cost of their card. These guys are not warded, so they are susceptible to any destruction cards, any sort of direct damage stuff. They can get taken out. But late game, if you can throw them down there, even more so if it's super late game and for some reason you magically still have a Calyx Helix in your hand, you can ward these guys. Don't like it. I don't like it. I mean, I like it, but I wouldn't like it if it was played against me. Now, Fateful Weird, it's not healing. It's very interesting, and I think you have to keep an eye on how you're building your deck. If you've got a good, 11 tactics, 13 tactic build with the Space Wolves, I think Fateful Weird should be one of those tactics. You're drawing 3 cards, and then for every tactic drawn, you're gaining Survivor. So drawing 3 cards is nice to begin with, but giving Survivor to your Warlord for each of those, that could be clutch, especially if you happen to be drawing another Fateful Weird, and then you can do that again. That's one thing that the Space Wolves don't have, but here's a way to give it to them. Here's a way to give it to them, and then on top of that, you're giving them cards in their hand too. I like it. I don't think it's for every deck. I think you'd have to build your deck very specific to it. I don't think it's impossible to build a tactic deck. I think that's very possible for Space Wolves. So yeah, so nice epic. Now this guy here, he's not on the surface. 4/5 frontline ward. This guy's going nowhere. He says you gotta move me. You gotta move me, because I ain't moving. But that's actually easier said than done. Well, easier done than you would think. Yes, easier done than you would think. His cost is really what puts him in that range where, at that point with that 5 energy, especially depending on who your Warlord is, if you're using other options, you put him out at 5, well, your opponent might have a Firewalkers already on the board, or they might be able to play the Raven Guard Landspeeder and be able to deal with him. I mean, it's not impossible. it means that it will require troop action. It will require some effort from the warlord or troops on table. But because of the energy cost that he has, it doesn't mean that it's impossible. It can be frustrating, especially if you can follow it up. If he happens to survive and you're able to follow it up by, doing a fire and steel and making him a 5/6. But as it is, he's very solid. And I think his cost puts him in that range where he's not overpowered. If he was cost 4 for a 4/5 with the frontline ward, that would be too much. I think the 5 is okay. Now, the Maiska Hunters, these guys have got ward. And they've got 5 and they've got 4 and they're common. I think they're good to start out with. I don't know how I feel about them in every deck after that, but that 5 cost is very high. It's very high. I don't know. I mean, having ward is really the selling point here. And I think if I had to choose between those two and Jurgen, I'd go with Jurgen. They're inverted stats, but one has got frontline, one doesn't have to attack. I would prefer that. Now, Odin Command Squad is interesting. So these guys have got Drop Pod, and they've got the passive that they're giving Drop Pod to other Astaris that you play, which is kind of unique. You're kind of wondering, well, how beneficial is that? Well, that can be very beneficial, especially if you're trying to set up a pack rush. You drop a couple pack guys, they're in drop pods, but that doesn't mean that their pack abilities won't trigger while they're in those drop pods, and that keeps them alive a little bit later in the game. So all your little cheap 2 cost, 3 cost guys are protected. And then on your turn you can unleash hell. Okay, that's not bad. Are they worth having 2 of? If you're building for a specific combo, yes. If you're not, maybe not. But having a 5/5 and drop pods, look, if you've played against Targhost in the Sons of Horus, you understand what a 5 attack in a drop pod does. He might have 7 health, but he's also a legendary. But he comes in a drop pod, and he's got 5 attack, and that's nothing to scoff at whenever you play it. So just imagine that the same in the Space Wolf context, except not only does he have drop pod, but that also potentially means that when I drop this Dunmar Gunnarsson on my next turn, he can have drop pod, or this Death Swarm pack can have drop pod, or the Maiska Hunters who already have ward can have drop pod. So you can see how there's potential there. There is. Now the Death Swarm pack, these guys, they've got a 6 cost, so yes, they're beefy. They've got a 5 attack, that's nice. They've got 6 health, which is really good. That ability, destroy troops attacked. It doesn't have to do damage. They can be shielded. They can be drop podded. They're going to be gone. That's crazy. That is so powerful. Doesn't matter. You have a survivor, gone. These guys just killed you, just X'd you out, just executed you. You're not going to see them in play as often because of their cost. But when they hit the table, they have to be priority 1 to get rid of if you are troop oriented. They're not warded, so they are susceptible to removal stuff, but they are their own removal. Now the spear, I'll say this. This has the range. I do not expect the spear to remain as it currently is. I think the spear is going to change. I think for a cost of 6, it gives your warlord +1/+0 and stun enemies damaged in combat. That's ridiculous, because that also counts units when your opponent attacks you with their units on their turn. It's stunned. So not only can you stun them for attacking, but then anything that isn't stunned and attacks you is going to be stunned until after their next turn. It basically means anything that is it shifts the aggro, and I just think that's too powerful. And I know I can't say I know. I have a good belief that we are going to see a lot of anti-stun or stun removal in the neutral cards that are going to come out at the end of the set. There's been a build-up through the course of this last expansion, specifically for stun with the Alpha Legion and various other effects. I think we're going to see some anti-stun, and that's great. But to give it to your Warlord, we've seen this ability in the events with the Eidolon event exclusive Warlord, who had that as just troops units that he attacked were stunned. Well, this doesn't mean that the Warlord has to attack them; they just have to take damage in the combat. That's even more powerful. It's a legendary, yes, but I think it's too. I think it's going to make for a lot of frustration. This card single-handedly would win you your games against Angron, because all he can do then at that point is play direct damage tactics, and if he runs out of those or troops, then you can just stun him. And when you don't stun him on your turn, you can play a bunch of troops, and then when he unstuns, he has to attack you or get stunned, or attack your troops and not get stunned. Does it change the Angron matchup for players who play Angron? Yes, but it's such a big hurdle. If that hits, it's almost like an auto win. It's just like a long drawn out auto win. I like it. I like the power, but I think it's too powerful. I really do. I don't expect it to stay this way. So we shall see. Now, this guy was my first legendary for the Space Wolves. This guy's awesome. He's got Ward. He's a 6/7. He gives adjacent units to Ward, which can include your Warlord, which is insane. And he can heal 3 to a friendly unit. This guy's not going anywhere, and he's going to make your Warlord feel nice and safe and comfy, and he's going to heal him every turn. Your opponent can't play Vengeful Spirit, can't play Pride of Emperor on him or your Warlord. They got to remove you the old-fashioned way. Yeah, you have this guy hit the table, and it's going to be a rough game. You can't Ambassador Melgator him because of that Ward. If there are no units on the board when Gunnarsson hits, you are in a good position because he's locked it down. Even if he's not healing your Warlord, he's dealing 6, and because he doesn't have, because he's got Ward, he's going to be able to deal 6 again, whether that's from your opponent attacking you or just not being able to answer it on their next turn, or he could just heal himself for 3. I mean, this guy is great. Will he stay the same? I don't know. He might be too good. He's really great for his costs. It makes sense, but I don't know. We'll see how many people start to rage once they encounter this, because this guy is going to be the guy who really makes people upset. Now, to go with that, I will say these guys here, Varangi veterans, they're 6 cost, so that's high, but they have flank, and they've got a 7 attack flank. That's insane. 7 attack can destroy almost everything that comes out at 6 cost, including Gunnarsson. I almost feel like there's no reason not to have at least one of these guys in your deck. It's almost like having having like a Pride of the Emperor that just works on troops. And if they happen to survive that flank attack, there's a 7 attack troop that your opponent has to deal with on their turn. Really powerful. Really powerful. Are they for every deck? Maybe not. I feel like I want to put at least one in every deck, just for that clutch, especially if I happen to run into a Kurz's Chosen, Donmar Gunnarsson, some of these Salamander cards, definitely some of the Sons of Horus cards, but beef. Now, Acer is interesting in the fact that he's got +3/+0 during your turn. He's a 9/7. He's a vehicle, so he's susceptible to dread to a crack grenade. He doesn't have ward. He's susceptible to melt a bomb, susceptible to direct damage. But that 9 attack on my turn, we'll get into a couple more cards here and I'll point something out. Now here's a front line. Here's a second front line that we've seen with the Astartes. Does not have ward though, but he's got pack heal 1. Now that just heals 1 to himself. But as a 7/7/7, that's a good common. It's a good common for starting out the game. I think later on, higher level, terror level decks, you're not going to see him so much. I don't know if I've seen him in any of the event games that I've played. But I expect some people are going to include him in there. That's not anything to scoff at. A 7/7 front line. Now Ragnarok, here's their destroy card. Here's the Legion's destroy card. Destroy an enemy troop and stun adjacent units. Very powerful. Again, we're seeing stun again. 7 cost. I think that's appropriately cost. I think it's interesting that this destroy card is a common. In the same way that Outflank is a common, not every destroy card is a common. I think Winter of the Week is a rare. Perfection's Flight is a rare. Even Sedition's Gate is a rare. So here's a common one. It's high cost, but its effect is straightforward, and it stuns adjacent units, which can include your opponent's warlord. So that's a good trade-off. Here's another vehicle, but this vehicle has ward. What? Ooh, and then on top of that, it's got 5 attack. What? And then on top of that, it's got 8 health. What? And then on top of that, for pack, it gains +2/+0, which means the turn that you put it out, so long as you're willing to attack with your warlord, you just put out a 7/8 vehicle who potentially can become a 9/8 on your next turn. And it has ward. And I keep saying that because it means as a vehicle, it ain't going anywhere. No crack grenade, no melt-a-bomb, no, who's this guy? Who's this pain in the butt that you don't ever see unless you're playing somebody who's playing Mechanicum necessarily? Yeah, this guy. No, ain't happening. He's not going anywhere. Your opponent is going to have to throw something heavy in terms of troop at him to deal with him. What does that mean? They got to throw the Raven at him. They've got to throw their Cade's necks at him. They've got to throw something on him. And by the way, ward protects against sentenced. So Raven Guard are going to come sparse because ward is going to really mess up their Corax game. It's really going to mess up their sentence game. I feel sorry for the Raven Guard. They've really taken a hammering these last couple of game updates, and ward is no exception. So these guys here, normally I say, 8 drops, but I feel like these guys here potentially, depending on the build, like if you had a bunch of 2 or 3 drops that they got and you have to close out the game with 1 or 2 high cost cards, I think these guys are not a bad option, because traditionally your high cost, you want to be cards that can close the game, tactics that can make or break it. With ward, you're not guaranteed to have a tactic that makes or breaks it. And the fact that this has ward means that it can also stay on the board until it does what it has to do. Unless your opponent is the world leaders and they can play Conqueror, it's not going anywhere. And then the next turn, like I said, this could potentially be a 9 attack. Oof. It's a different way to get the same effect. It takes an extra turn, but it's a given. And then nothing says that you can't. Nothing says that you can't give it ice and steel. It's there. It's there. I like it. Now, here is a different way to go with your 8 cost. I don't have this one yet here, but the Wolves put Frecky and Gary into play. You get a 4/5 flank and a 4/5 flank. And this one stuns when attacking, which, again, I feel that effect should be the same as the spear. stun when attacking. And maybe we'll see that change, but 4/5 stun when attacking. Flank, okay. And this one here has a +1/+0 for each damaged enemy, which means at minimum it's going to be a 5/5. There's no way your opponent's warlord is going to be undamaged by the time you get to 8 energy. So minimum 5/5, easily a 6/5 or a 7/5. And because they've got flank, they can act again, or they can act on the turn that they come in, help you clear the board out, and maybe they happen to be left over. So now your opponent has got your warlord and 2 wolves to deal with, and they won't be very thrilled with it. Now, something that I think is neat, especially is after you play these guys, you play Fenrisian wolves, you jump them out, they beat up some things, and they survive. You can underverse them and put them back in your deck, and then draw 2 cards. And guess what? They cost 0 when you pull them out again. So return value through the roof, especially if you can play Frecky the Swift with even more units that are damaged. I mean, it's late game. Are you going to be able to reap those rewards or not? I don't know, but I want to see that happen, because it looks like that has just got, that makes people sad and salty at the same time. Or even if you can do it all in the same turn, drop them, flank them, attack them, keep them alive, underverse them, pull them up. You happen to draw them again, drop them down again, full health, flank them again if there's anything remaining that needs to be flanked. That is worthy of epic replays. So I need that one. That is one legendary that I need. Now these guys here, these guys are Astartes. They're not warded, but man, 7-8 terms, Wolfguard squad, and for pack they heal 1 to your warlord, which is great actually when they come out, depending on your warlord's health, because you can drop them, attack with your warlord, and essentially your warlord is taking 1 less damage. They've healed, and then if you have other troops that can attack, you can recoup some health on your warlord. Not always perfect. If I had to choose between the two, I would probably go with this dreadnought as opposed to the Wolfguard, because of that ward, because of the vehicle status, and because I can just up the attack damage on that. Is just crazy. And then we've got this Land Raider here, Pawn of Imgur, 7/9 pack, deal 2 damage to random enemy. These guys are kind of like a different version of the Sons of Horus Land Raider, which you drop this here, the Jordan Land Raider, giving your friendly troops +1/+1. This guy doesn't give your stats +1/+1, but it does deal 2 extra damage every time your guys are attacking. And if you've got other troops already on the board, 2 or 3 troops, you drop this, you attack with 2 or 3 troops, you deal 4 to 6 extra damage to random enemies, which helps winnow the board, which helps deal damage to your opponent's warlord if they're the only one. It's not a bad card is what I'm saying. Is it worth including in every deck? It's going to depend on your options. With what I currently have, I don't know if I'd have it. It's a toss-up between these two. I would probably go with the vehicle just to test it out. I'm not going to be running Space Wolves on ladder anytime soon, not until I've got a couple more cards. But it's got potential. What really has me interested here is this guy. Now, typically I don't like 10 drops, because aside from, and this is 10 drops specific, because 9 drops you can kind of play around with, and some of the 9 drops have got abilities, and some of the 9 drops have got good abilities. At least you're getting some value on their replay. Here is a 10 drop. It is not warded, which is its one saving grace in terms of balance. It's an 8/11, which is ridiculous in terms of the health, not to mention the attack. It has shield, which is nice, and that's kind of on par with some of the other 10 drop vehicles that do exist. Okay, so it's on par. But it's got 3 draw a card. If it is a troop, put it in play and give it fast, can act again. That ability is really the selling point. If you can keep him on board, you not only gain essentially a card draw, you gain a way to, on the next turn, use this ability 3 times. Potentially put 3 troops on the table and give them fast, and then attack with this 8 damage, which is great at clearing a front line or ending the game, if you can't already end the game that way. But really where it gets into is if you built your deck right, and you have some luck, and you use this ability, you could pull this guy out right away and have a 9/7 with fast to accompany your Corpse Swan at 8/11. You could use him to pull out these guys, who could have a 4/2 to accompany your 8/11. In the same way, you could very easily pull out neutral stuff. It just has to be a troop. It does not have to be a Astartes. You could pull out a Pawn of Ymgr and give it fast. Now, granted, you're going to have to carefully keep an eye on in terms of how you're building your deck. You're going to have to get lucky to get to that 10 spot, and your opponent is not going to be able to get rid of it. I will say this, if you've got Gunnarsson down and he's still alive, and you can drop Corpse Swan next to him, you will have your opponent, what are they going to do? That's got 11 health. So even those 9 drops that can do 8 or 9 damage is not going to be enough. They're going to have to attack it with 2 massive things to deal 11 damage. So you protect it with Ward, with Corpse Swan. Now it's warded and it's shielded. Oh, it's shielded too. Shit. I'll have to frag grenade it. Or something to get the shield down and then do damage. Oh, it's just... Is it practical in every game? No. But if you can get that going, it's worth considering, especially if you've got a deck that, like I said, it would have to be tooled. Either tooled specifically around that combo coming up in mind, or comboed in the fact that just like you can afford to play a 10 drop because you've got other stuff going on. Whereas opposed to some decks, you've got to play at 10, you want to play 2 or 3 cards out of your hand. Well, maybe you don't. If you built your deck right, maybe 1 card is enough, and that's a good enough card because it's giving you potentially on your next turn 3 more cards. It might depend on the matchup. It might depend on what your opponent has on hand. But I like that. I don't know if that's obviously it's a little bit more, it's one of those legendaries that I don't think is going to go in every deck. I wouldn't throw it in every deck. I would have to build around it specifically. If you ask me, I think the best legendaries here are Gunnarsson and Baelai. I think those are the best legendaries outside of the Primarch. And then following that would be the Spear and the Wolves. A lot of potential with those. Corpse Swan has insane potential, and I'm looking forward to seeing it used. But I think it has to be really refined, and I think you need a little bit of luck, but you also have to have your deck designed that way to take advantage of it. Because in the same way that Captured Forge can throw down some beefy vehicles, here's a way to throw down beefy troops and give them fast all at the same time. No, people won't like that. So it not having ward and just having shield is okay. And 11 health vehicle, hope people are packing melta bombs. And even then, with ward floating around, are they going to be as reliable as they used to be? No, they're not. So yeah, so that's it. That's what I've got. Those are the Space Wolf cards, and man, they are impressive. Time will tell if some of these get changed. Time will tell if ward is changed or not. It's hard to say with just event experience, and I played 2 Space Wolf decks on ladder. Varying results, nothing huge. Time will tell if they're really truly broken or not. There definitely has some potential to be problems with Ward with the way that it can shut off entire deck strategies. But like I said, you gotta push people out of their comfort zone sometimes, and I think that's necessary to keep the game fresh, keep it alive, keep people thinking, keep people thinking. They won't like it, but it's for the good of the game. It's for the greater good. Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see what the next faction, the Thousand Sons, brings to go with it, because you think, oh, how are they going to counter all this? Well, I don't know, but if this is what we're starting off with, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting, and I'm looking forward to that. So, all right, guys, that's it for me. I've talked long enough. It is late. I'm tired. My throat, I think my voice is losing. But giving you some ideas in terms of how to use the Space Wolves, in terms of what cards to look for. If you ask me, if you see them in the shop, the legendaries to pick up. Baelai, Gunnarsson for sure. You're probably your best epics to get if you don't have a Warlord. Wolfclaw, Stalker Squad, and I would probably recommend at least one of this Dreadnought. I just think that's so good. And then rares from there, depending on what you need and depending on where you're at. And if you've got the tickets, now's the time to play them in the events and get some Space Wolf cards that way. That's one way to do it. I bought one faction crate, and I bought, and then that's it. I didn't buy anything else, and then I just played the event. And I bought Fellhand from the shop in the veteran store today, because he's available in the veteran store if you go down a tab. Everything else I got here was from the events, and that's not a whole lot, but it's the start of something. That's how you build a faction. And by the end of this month, I look forward to having a pretty good grip of all three of the faction cards, whatever they are. I'm gonna keep plugging away with it. I've got the tickets for it. I've got the gold for it. I've got the time for it, and I am excited for it. And here we go. The battle is on. The battle is on with these guys. Master Classic Excalibur, Logos Maxima, which I don't know if I paid attention. I don't recall seeing those guys, but they're putting up points this time. They must be saving up for Space Wolves. I think a lot of people are. It's gonna be a tough fight. So that's it for me. That's it. Saturday night, Wolf weekend. We got game updates. I do kind of want to do some stuff about the game updates, because there's been some new features added that are exciting. Again, like I said, I'm going to try to get some more practice games in, or not practice games, but more event practice in rather, and do a video breakdown on a deck or two, depending on what I've got results wise. I do have, thankfully, 12 wins with the Fell Hand, so there's something there to be said. If I can duplicate that effort again, then I think it's worth doing a video for. I don't want to give people the wrong advice, but I do want to give people some suggestions in terms of what works and what doesn't work. And that's it. So thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. I hope I was able to give you some insight. I hope with all the Space Wolf hype that you really digested, see what you want, see what you like. They should be fun. They come off as very powerful, but I don't think they're too powerful. I think there's a degree of balance there. I think time will tell how powerful they are in comparison. Are they just powerful with all the stuff that has come before? Or are they in a good spot? Especially because we don't know what's coming next. We still got Thousand Sons, the mysterious third faction, which I believe is going to be revealed this weekend, and I believe is the Custodes, or Talons of the Emperor. That's really what it looks like. That's what all signs seem to point to. And then on top of that, then there's the neutral cards, and the neutral cards are always add some stuff that we need to the game, and I definitely think we're going to see some anti-stun stuff. I think it's coming, whether that's units that are immune to stun or provide immunity to a stun to adjacent units. It just makes sense. It makes sense with the progression. We went with that with a bunch of stealth stuff, and then we got anti-stealth. Now we're getting stun stuff. Let's get anti-stun, you know? So it won't surprise me. That's it. All right. Well, that's it. Have a good night, guys. Wherever you are in the world, get some sleep. I know I'm going to. And if you're wide awake, then keep playing Legions. We'll talk to you later. All right, bye.